It is the second model, introduced in the 2024 Nadesico collaboration with Metarob S, sporting the design of a super robo within a mecha anime series. It is KSN01, GekiGankai 3, with a kit of Wide Beam, Overcharge, Jet Blow, Float Legs, and the leg ability of Super Armor, which nullifies Paralyze ailments, a set number of hits relative to the rank of the legs. Now, GekiGankai 3 in particular is a rather strange case, because while it doesn't necessarily appear in Nadesico outright as part of a character or a mech that the character pilots, it's instead a cartoon within a cartoon, if that makes any sense, sporting a lot of very obvious inspirations from other works from GekiGankai, such as the Super Robo with Mazinger Z designs. I see a lot of Shin Getter or S Getter with the design, and even some Devilman there as well with the helmet design on the head as well. But all the same, it's still going to be an exceptionally strong model if used correctly. And the thing about GekiGankai 3 is it's a very diverse model that's rather chunky on the weight and heavy with the armor, but also weirdly all over the place. Wide Beam on the head part is the optic attribute shooting skill, so it does mean it gets a ×2 damage bonus at 30% charge and a ×3 at 100%, but it also is an AoE type of attack, which means it will damage all parts equally, or all active parts equally, relative to how many active parts are on the target when attacking. So if it's a healthy target with all 4 parts, that's a quarter damage to each, or if they're able to sponge the damage with, say, Conceal or a Shielder that is tanking it, that instead will pool all the damage toward that one part instead. However, given the fact that he only has one use of this, it does kind of put him in the same tier and issue as, say, Mazin Z from the GekiGankai collaboration, or even pre-tune-up Arcbeetle, where if you hit, great, if not, you kind of missed your shot. And given that all 3 of the above-mentioned attacks are also Metaforce reliant, it does also require him to have a charge to use if you want to really capitalize on that bonus. Overcharge on the right arm is a conventional melee skill that has a rather interesting condition to it, and that condition actually can work for you or, oddly enough, against you if it's timed incorrectly. But to explain Overcharge briefly, upon attacking the target, it doesn't really do anything notably different with, say, piercing or hammer or AoE type skills. Instead, what it does is actually fill the enemy's Metaforce gauge by a certain amount. Now, normally you'd probably be looking at me going, but isn't that normally what you don't want happening, because that means they can nuke you with it faster? And for the most part, you're correct. You generally don't want them to be able to have a faster Metaforce charge, because the enemy AI will use it faster. However, Overcharge has a little bit of an extra condition to it if it's attacking somebody that has a full charge. Now, if it has someone under full charge, it's going to just can progressively fill it while dealing damage. But if you attack somebody with a full Metaforce charge, its damage is quintupled ×5, and the skill converts into an AoE, which means it will then damage all active parts in an ultimate punish for having a full charge. Then on top of that, it will also remove the full charge from the enemy in question. So this is going to be a really solid skill, not necessarily for the conventional everyday kind of fights, but instead rather for a lot of specialized super invasions, where this gets a lot of very heavy use, such as where enemies start with full Metaforce charge or nearly full Metaforce charge. As long as you're able to conveniently and consistently outrun the target, you are able to actually, and even quite possibly, cancel them and prevent them from using a Metaforce nuke or a super buff if you're able to catch them with it and punish them, giving you a free turn. However, I do also want to give a fair bit of warning about this one, it is kind of blind. Given it has a success stat of just barely 600, it does mean that you are going to have to really kind of hope and pray that you're going to land that hit and they don't dodge or graze, because if they do and they still have a full charge, they still get to go on with using that Metaforce nuke anyway, and you're going to eat the full punishment for it. Jet Blow on the left arm is another conventional melee skill, but instead of Jet Hammer, which Adonis Singh has, Jet Blow fights much similarly to Long Shot, which is a shooting skill relative to distance. Jet Blow does remarkably the same thing. The farther away the target is from the user, the more damage you're going to deal as bonus effect on top of the already fairly solid base damage there at 1648 that you're already going to have. However, since it does have a success stat under 1000 at 933, much like it is with Overcharge, but not necessarily the case as well, just make sure that you are consistent with your hits, or you're going to end up missing more than you'd really like. Plus, with heat stats in the mid 500s, it's not bad, but just bear in mind you're probably going to want to try to comp that if you want to guarantee getting some more speed out of it. Float legs means that he's going to have an A rank across every terrain as a whole, at 10% across the board, and of course that 20% S rank on Cyber. So terrains are most certainly not going to be a problem for this gentleman as well while he's on the field. And the best part is he's got super armor, which is the negation of any paralyzed ailments, such as Tornado, Freeze, Free Shot, Hyper Thunder, or anything else of the like. Those do not affect him. And this is going to tie in very intimately with another float type design that has currently been plaguing competitive meta, and that is Artemis, the goddess type, for females for the same reason. So just imagine having both of those legs in a team with fairly solid specs doing basically the same thing. Ailments are now suddenly going to see a very sharp downturn in their overall viability when it comes to use in competitive meta. Now, when it comes to numbers, he's packing some pretty solid stats here as well, with an 816 for his mobility off to a good start. A 1304 for his evade is also really nice, as it means he can dodge and graze fairly consistently. A melee resist of 1407 and a shoot resist of 1086 are also fairly well-rounded as well. Going to be a little better up close and personal, but can still be used at range fairly solidly with some pretty consistent overall performance. And a heavy support of 3 is honestly something you don't see super terribly often with float legs, and given that he is triple heavy, it does fit in very well with his design. All this being said though, as a pure set score, I still have to rate GekiGankai 3 a pretty middle of the road kind of 6.5 out of 10. While his design is definitely very creative, and if you are a fan of Shin Getter, Devilman, or any other series from the iconic Go Nagai, this is definitely going to be a model for you as another resident Super Robo, albeit as from a cartoon in a cartoon. But his kit, when it comes to how he performs on the field, is unfortunately kind of all over the place. He's got Wide Beam, which can be used for a pretty solid shooting-based skill, but given he's only got one use of it, it does require you to actually time it carefully if you plan to use it at all. Overcharge can be nasty, but you have to, again, time it and make sure you don't accidentally mistime it and give the enemy a free Metaforce nuke. And Jet Blow, even if it will be the most consistent form of damage he'll have, the farther away the target is, the more damage he deals. The closer it is, probably not nearly as much. And given that he's also triple heavy, he also is susceptible to anyone that uses gravity skills. So that includes Break, Break Hammer, Break Rush, Wide Break, or anything similar. He is most certainly going to be feeling the pain for that while he's there. And this isn't touching on anyone that somehow has anti-float. As mixed parts, I do have to rate him just a notably higher at an 8 out of 10. Now, given that, again, his kit is kind of all over the place, if you were able to possibly mix up the parts, such as, say, Overcharge on your Super Invasion teams, or Float Legs with Super Armor on your PvP teams, then you absolutely will be cooking with some very solid versatility. And even Jet Blow, to a point, may have some viability as well if used correctly. Wide Beam, unfortunate as it is, and as powerful as it can honestly be, is probably not going to be the part you're going to use on him at all, if at all, because it requires too much charge to use and too much time to prepare.